What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Coffee with Cory. I'm your host, Cory Smith, here with a special guest in this episode, Mitchell Northam. Mitchell, a women's college basketball writer, also WNBA writer. You cover everything pretty closely. So, first of all, how are you doing, sir?
I'm good. Just another week. Got a baby sleeping over here, and yeah, we're just hanging out and taking it day by day. A couple weeks into the women's college basketball season, that's been a lot of fun. Got to do some traveling to see some games. So yeah, it's been a good start to the year.
Yes, sir. And we'll talk obviously about NC State as a whole here in just a second, but I wanted to start with kind of an overview of the ACC. We were talking about it beforehand, kind of a bizarro scene that's going on here for men's basketball actually winning some notable games.
Yeah,
Whereas the women's basketball side of things just not the case so far. NC State has dropped a couple. They did win obviously the season opener against Tennessee. You win that game, but dropped a couple, and then Duke has done the same thing. UNC, just the ACC as a whole, and your thoughts on the triangle too, and how things have gone so far.
yeah. Coming into this year, I think a lot of us thought, like talking to people at ACC tip off and stuff, we thought this was going to be a pretty wide open year for the ACC. I think a lot of us thought, all right, like the three triangle teams are sort of at the top, and you can kind of pick any order. And then it's like Louisville and then Notre Dame, but Notre Dame is really just like a one person team at this point.
Yeah,
Really fallen off. And that showed itself when they played against an actual team in Michigan. They got blown out by 40 points. And then it's like, okay, well, Stanford should be better. Clemson should be better. Virginia spent a ton of money on their roster. Like that's probably like $1 million roster. Just like what based on what they spent and stuff in the portal. For like the women's basketball side, like that's a lot of money.
yeah.
So I think a lot of people thought it was going to be kind of a wide open year, and that has sort of been the case through 2.5 weeks or whatever so far this season, where we really haven't seen a dominant team like step up and emerge as the favorites in the ACC so far. I think your highest ranked team in the AP Top 25 poll right now is North Carolina, and I think that's just by virtue of they only have one loss, and they do have a pretty good win over Fairfield. I think NC State still probably has the best win by beating Tennessee. Um, Duke was the preseason favorite coming in, and they, they lost that game to Baylor over in Paris, and then just choked away that game against West Virginia, where West
Yeah.
Virginia just had 5 players to play with in the second half up at the Greenbrier. I think NC State is the team that really had the opportunity to kind of separate themselves because of the schedule they played. So like, if they had pulled out that win against USC down in Charlotte, or if they had beaten TCU this past Sunday, or both, I think a lot of people would have came away and said, okay, NC State is the favorite. But now, it's still pretty wide open, and that's coupled with like just the ACC in general having some disappointing non-conference losses as well. Like we had Pitt lose to a Division III team. That's not good. Virginia lost at home to UMBC, if that sounds familiar.
Yeah.
What else did we have? Jacksonville beat Georgia Tech. Louisville hasn't really looked all that great. They're going to play Kentucky this Saturday. I think that game is not going to go well for them. Stanford is the team that has kind of played up to expectations and has kind of fulfilled they should be better this year sort of promise. Duke has a lot of things to figure out, and I think State has some things to figure out.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask you too. I mean, just specifically on State. I mean, you've been there. You've seen some of these games in person. I mean, I want to go back to the USC loss because obviously, TCU was what it was, but like the USC loss and then now TCU. The interesting aspect to that, NC State hasn't shot the ball particularly well from 3-point range all season long, but it really felt like one of the biggest issues was the inefficiency from your front court. Obviously, Tilda Trigger hitting some threes, but NC State not really having kind of a go-to in those games to hit shots from inside. Camille Pierre did finish with, double-digit points in those games, but shot like 25% against USC in that game, and then this past weekend against TCU. How much do you feel like NC State is kind of the opposite this year, where typically they've relied on their guards? And I think, once Sam Jones figures it out, it'll be, they'll be better from that standpoint, because Zoe Brooks has played well, but kind of the opposite, where like you kind of have to rely on this front court a little bit at times.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of think they need to play through Tilda Trigger and Camille Pierre much more often, rather than just kind of settling for some of the 3-pointers that they've settled for that just haven't fallen right. Like that game against USC, I think NC State had a pretty good size advantage, and Tilda Trigger took just 5 field goal attempts that game, or 7, excuse me. She was 3 of 7 from the floor, 1 of 2 from 3-point land, but like 3 of 7 is just not enough for somebody like Tilda Trigger, like who's 6'6", 6'7" down there, and is a really good finisher inside. Like when you get the ball to her, like I felt like she needed more shots in that game. Now on the other end of that, against TCU, she got the shots. She got 12 of them. Now she hit 50%. Maybe you could argue she should have gotten even more. That game against TCU was just, I think the shot selection was not great. I think TCU's defense is also good. They deserve some credit. But like when you have Zoe and Zam combined for, let's see, 2 of 22 shooting, like that's just not a recipe for success. So I think like what you have with State early on this season is Camille Pierre still trying to work her and figure out kind of what the best role is for her, how to use her best. She did just get to the team, in like mid-July, August, right? So, late kind of working her into the fold. Zoe is now, before her freshman and sophomore year, she had Isaiah James and Sanaya Rivers, right next to her. And she wasn't, sometimes she could step up and be that number one option, like that game against Notre Dame last year in Reynolds Coliseum that went to double overtime. She was awesome in that game. But there were a lot of other times where, Zaza or Sanaya was your bus driver and really got things done. And now it's kind of on her. Like she is the one, I think, that has to be the difference maker and has to be the tone setter for this team. Like she's going to have the ball in her hands the most. And then, you also need Zam Jones to step up and hit some of those open shots. Now, she did that against Tennessee. She was basically the reason they won against Tennessee in the fourth quarter. Yeah. You just need some more consistency out of her. But I think overall, like they do just lack some really good depth. I don't think that Maddie Cox has developed the way that they had hoped that she would. I think that they would like to see more out of Lorena Ewu and Mallory Collier, as players who could kind of spell Tilda Trigger down there in the paint. And, just out of the guard play, like there's really not somebody like, that could take Zam's spot or anything like that. Like, so this is the team they have. It is a young team. There are no seniors on this roster. I think you would like to see a little bit more out of Caden Samuels at times as well. I think they just have some things to figure out. And this was a really, really tough, schedule to start the season for them, playing 3 ranked teams, Tennessee, USC, and TCU. So, you kind of throw them into the fire a little bit and you get, 1 out of 3 wins out of it. And you kind of figure out, like, they've been exposed now. So, like, Westmore knows what the problems are. And, like, that's a good thing. And now you have this 4-game stretch coming up where theoretically you should win all 4 of these games: Coastal Carolina, Rhode Island, Green Bay, Southern Miss. These are kind of your get right games and figure it out games, because then the SEC challenge comes up and you got to go to Oklahoma, and that's going to be a really tough game.
I was going to say, what do you make of that kind of potential rotation in the backcourt? Because there's still, like you said, there's still a lot to kind of figure out. And, with Zam, hasn't really been there yet, but she's clearly a player that they've, not only invested a lot in terms of, monetary value, but also just invested a lot in terms of like, hey, you're going to be one of our key players. And we know it going into the season. They don't send her to ACC tip-off if you don't feel that way. But, the Cadence Samuel situation, 2 of 6 in the last game out, hit the 1 3-point early on, but missed the next 2. We haven't really seen a ton from her, and it feels like Devin Quigley at times has really come off the bench and been, kind of that big guard that you need every once in a while. I mean, do you feel like this is something that we should watch throughout the season as like these two kind of compete to really be those key players, and especially now that you mentioned over the next few weeks, they have some opportunities for them to get going, and for players like Kaishi Lunan, players like Adelaide Jernigan to try to step up off the bench as well.
Yeah, I think these 4 games I think this is the time where Wes is really going to figure out what he has on his bench, what he can do with the rotation that might be different from what he has been doing. Like when you talk about like starting Q and bringing Devin Quigley off the bench, like I kind of wonder if maybe they try to start Devin Quigley, and see
Yeah.
what you have there. I think the hope with Samuels was that she would kind of be that Madison Hayes sort of role where it's like, okay, you get some points, you get some rebounds, you get some assists. You do a lot of dirty work and like that sort of thing. Hit the open shot when the ball comes to you. And we've seen that a little bit, but I think not quite as consistently as Madison Hayes was at it. Where she was basically good for like, I don't know, 11, 3 and 3 every night or something like that. Like just really consistent and kind of putting up the numbers that she put up. You can always kind of count on her for, a big player to a game and, just sort of be a difference maker in that way. That hasn't totally come to fruition yet, but yeah, I think this 4-game stretch that they got and, was probably created by design, knowing kind of what they were starting with Tennessee, USC, and TCU. They probably wanted like a break in here before they got that SEC challenge game, because I'm sure they knew that game was going to be tough, just based on how the ACC and SEC pair those teams up. And it is going to be a really tough game. Like Oklahoma's really good. I just saw them in person, oddly enough, at Western Carolina, which was kind of weird.
That's right. You told me about that. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I think this is the time where, yeah, Wes has to figure some things out in terms of the rotation, in terms of what he really has on that bench. And if he needs to make any changes to the starting lineup, I'm not really sure you have a better option than Zam Jones on your bench. And like you mentioned, like they are invested in her, and I don't think the result will be sending her to the bench. I think like you kind of have to start her. I don't know that there's a better option there, but maybe you can make a change with Caden Samuels.
Yeah, the other one too, and I don't want to mention her as much because I know she's more of a true point guard, but like Kaishi Lunan also, was clearly a spark off the bench. I know she wants to play more
Sure.
point guard, but and Zoe is clearly that player, but it feels like you could have a situation where every once in a while you use her as kind of a spark plug, but if she's also somebody that, in this past game, I mean, you're playing against a team at TCU that is, a solid offensive team, and NC State was able to force 9 turnovers in that game, and she was, the one that or 13 turnovers in that game, and she generated 4 of those steals. So you're looking for a defensive spark, you're looking for an offensive spark. I mean, you feel like she could probably provide that in some way, shape, or form, despite the fact that she might not be playing point guard when Zoe's out there on the court.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you play her and Zoe together. And I mean, like Zoe, there was a lot of times last year where Sanaya or Isaiah were bringing the ball up the court and kind of orchestrating the offense while Zoe was playing off the ball. So maybe there is a situation where, if Zam's on the bench, yeah, you play the two of them together,
Mm-hmm.
and see what that looks like. And if it looks good, sure. I mean, there's a lot of teams out there that are going to play, 2 point guards. Oh, we're stirring over here. But I think, yeah, I think that's a possibility for sure.
All right. Last thing I wanted to ask you about Tilda Trigger. Just give me your thoughts on her play early on this season.
Yeah, I just I think she needs more touches inside.
Mhm.
I would like to see her be a little bit more assertive. There are a lot of things that she does that really reminds me of Elisa Cunane. And
Yeah.
there were times during her career where I wish that she would have been more aggressive and more assertive, and at different points just say, give me the damn ball, and go inside and do your thing. Like this is an ACC now. Like the ACC used to be like you had to have a big, like as recently as a couple years ago when Elizabeth Kitley was playing for Virginia Tech. Now it really is like a guard dominated league, and I think if you have a really skilled center, it can be a massive advantage. So I think it's not. I know Wes likes to play this 4 out 1 in kind of thing, but that's sort of been thrown off with the addition of Camille Pierre, because Camille Pierre is really more of an inside player, like more of a really traditional power forward type. Like she can shoot the three and make them on occasion, but really like more of a traditional, like go inside and do some dirty work and get it done. And we've seen Tilda Trieger make some threes as well. But I just kind of think like they maybe need to kind of shift the mentality to like, this is a real big advantage that they have, having Trieger and Camille Pierre together. I think it's they went to the Final Four with a pairing of River Baldwin and Mimi Collins at those positions.
Yeah.
And I think that both of these players are better than them. So, I think they just got some things to figure out, and I think we might see them actually figure it out during this 4-game stretch that they have coming up, where they'll play 4 mid-majors in a row.
Yeah, I was going to say the one thing that might separate her a little bit from Elisa Kinnan. I mean, there's a couple things. Obviously, Lisa was a little more of an inside player, but if you want to be that type of player, and I've said the exact same thing several times, if you want to be that type of player, she's got to also be a little more physical down low and actually draw some fouls and things along those lines. She hasn't, I think, to this point in the season, I'm looking at the free throws here. Yeah, I mean, she's only hasn't had more than 3 in a game. So, but she's a 3-point or free throw shooter too. So,
yeah, she's a good free throw shooter. Yeah, she's only had 7 trips to the line this year in 4 games. So
yeah. I'm gonna let you go be a dad. I appreciate you jumping on, man.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Well, thank you again, everybody, for listening. We will talk to you again soon.